Alright everybody, welcome to Unit 5 study session on conversions. It's a recorded session just because this unit was so small and short that it would just be a lot easier to record it. So reminder that your test is on Tuesday, so just kind of heads up. As we go through this, if you have any questions for your teacher or you're confused or lost along the way, bring it up to your teacher and she will be able to go over that for you, okay? So we're going to go ahead and get started with slide number 1. In slide number 1, we're going to take a look at converting all those numbers into percents, okay? So one thing I'd like to bring up before we get started, one way that I talk about is doing something from that's called D to P. And this stands for decimal to percent. And when I change a decimal to percent, I'm going to move my decimal over 2 times. This works the same way if I'm given a percent and I want to change that to a decimal. I can change that by just moving my decimal over. So D to P and P to D kind of help me keep my brain kind of organized so I know what I'm doing. So if I take a look at number A, I have 60.65. If I use my D to P, I'm going from a decimal to a percent. So I'm going to move my decimal over 2 times to the right. And if I do that once, twice, it's going to give me 65%. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to B. This is a decimal, so D to P, moving it 2 times to the right, once, twice. It's going to give me 334%. Taking a look at letter C, same thing. D to P, decimal to percent, 2 times, once, twice, gives me 0.078%, tiny percent. Taking a look at letter D, for me to turn this into a percent, I have to turn it into a decimal first. And I'm going to do that by taking the top number and putting a top hat on it. And if I do that, I remember that that's going to go on the inside of my division question. And I always put a decimal and put that up first and then a couple zeros. And my 3 is going to be my divisor. That's going to be the one that's going to be breaking the 1 in equal parts. There are 0 3s and 1, so 0 times 3 is 0. I'm going to subtract, bring down a 0. I have 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract gives me another 1, bring down a 0. 3, 9, 1, and I'm going to notice that that's a repeating number. So what you need to do is I'm going to go ahead and write down my decimal. And I'm going to do it a couple times because I know it's repeating. Same thing, D to P, I'm moving it over 2 times. Once, twice. So it's going to give me 33.3. Don't forget the repeating sign because that 3's are going to keep going, percent. Taking a look at the next one, same thing. Write it, top hat on the 5 if you don't know what it is and you haven't memorized that one. I'm going to go ahead and work it out over here. 5.00. Put a 6 over there. If you need more zeros, you can add them as you go. Move your decimal up. There are 0 6's can fit into 5. Subtract. Bring down your first 0. 8 times 6 is 48. Subtract gives me a 2. There are 3 6's and 20 gives me 18. Subtract gives me another 2. And same thing, you're going to see that that's going to become a repeating number. So I'm going to go back up to where I was. I have 0.8333 and that's going to repeat. D to P, 2 times to the right, once, twice. It's going to give me 83.3 repeating percent. Okay, give everybody just a moment to finish that off and then we'll go over to the second slide. Okay, if you're not finished or you have questions about something, again, make a star or let some kind of mark so that you can ask your teacher before your test on Tuesday. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide, I am converting all of those items into fractions. So before we get started, something that you have to know before we do this is I have my decimal. When I have my decimal, the first number behind it is going to be in the tenths position. The next number is going to be in the hundredths position. Then the thousandths position. So when I'm looking at letter A, I notice that I have a 3 in the tenths and a 5 in the hundredths. So that's going to give me 35 over 100. Don't forget though, when you're doing these, you got to make sure that that number is in lowest terms. Simplify it. And I can do that by knowing that the top can be divided by 5 and the bottom can be divided by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And there's no other numbers that will go into there. Taking a look at B, I have 4.2. I have a 4, which is a whole number, and a 2 in the tenths position. And again, I'm going to go ahead and simplify that number by taking 2 out of top and bottom. 78 over tenths, hundredths, thousandths. And again, I know that the 8 is even and the 0 is even, so I can divide both sides by 2. It's going to give me 39 over 500. That was your final, and that was your final. 67% at all times. That percent sign automatically means that it's out of 100. So it's simply going to be 67 over 100. And I cannot simplify that because there are no numbers that go into 67 and 100. So remember that that percent sign always means 100. Okay? Everybody good, I hope? I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. My next one, I'm going to go ahead and label my division problem. So if I have a division problem, and let's say I have 4 in this position, and a 24 in this position, and a 6 on the top, I need to know what they're called. So this top number here, which is the answer to a division question, is called a quotient. This 24, which is going to be split up into equal groups, is called a dividend. Whoops, there we go. And my 4 is called the divisor. That's the one that's going to be doing the dividing. The dividend is going to be the one that's going to be breaking apart into 4 groups. And my quotient, again, is my answer. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. This slide, we're going to go ahead and put those in order. And we're going to go ahead and order these from greatest to least. My very first job when I'm doing this is to go ahead and write myself a table. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and please jot yourself and write down a table so that way you have that information, you can organize your thoughts. Always remember that your number will go in the first. You're going to convert everything into decimals in the second one, and then you're going to order them in the third box. So if I take a look at this, my 1/3 is going to go here. My 0.03 times 10 to the first, 0.32, and 0.333. Then it's my turn now to go ahead and turn everything into decimals. So if I have 1/3, my decimal to 1/3 is 0.333, and that's going to keep repeating. And if you're not sure, then you need to take the top and divide it by the bottom. My scientific notation, this is a positive exponent, so that means I need to make my number bigger by moving my decimal to the right. So that is now going to become 0.3. This was already a decimal, yay. And this was already a decimal as well, super duper. I'm going to fill in a couple zeros in any holes, so I have 3 numbers on the end of each number. And now I'm going to go ahead and order them, but before I do, I'm going to jot down, I'm going from greatest to least as a reminder that that's the order that I'm ordering my numbers in. So now I'm going to go ahead and compare. 0, 0, 0, 0, those are all the same, so I need to move to the right. 3, 3, 3, 3, those are all the same, I need to move to the right. 3, 0, 2, and 3, I'm looking for the biggest number, so it's going to be the 3 and the 3. Because those are tied, I'm going to move next door. That's 3 repeating, and that's the 3. Those are tied, so I need to move next door. I know that that's going to continue. This number ends with a 0. So I know that that 3 is bigger than that 0. So my greatest number is going to be that one. My second greatest is going to be that one. And then I'm going to go back and compare. I have 3, 3, the same. 0, 2. The 2 is bigger than the 0. That's going to be my next. And my last, or my smallest number, is going to be that one. My final step is to go ahead and rewrite them. I know that 1/3 is biggest, followed by 0.333, followed by 0.32, and finally my smallest one is 0.03 times 10 to the first power. Okay? Hope everybody is caught up with me and everybody finds this unit fairly easy. That's a good thing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. There we go. This time I'm going to order from least to greatest. I'm going to go ahead and put in my numbers. I have 4/5, 0.752, 7.52 times 10 to the negative first, followed by 78%. Again, my middle column is for all my decimals. 4/5, 0. Make sure my decimal's up there. 8. 8 times 5 is 40. 0, and I'm done. 0.8. And I'm going to go ahead and put my decimals in now, so that way I'm lining them up. I don't get them all messed up. This is already a decimal, yay. To the negative, that means this is going to become smaller. I'm going to move to the left. And then 0.78 as my fraction. Okay? Everybody okay? Go ahead and make this a 1 instead of a 2. For some reason I had a typo in that one. Okay? So least to greatest. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some extra zeros on the end so that way I can compare. I'm going from least to greatest. 0, 0, 0, 0. 8, 7, 7, 7. My 7s are my smaller ones, so I'm going to focus on those. 5, 5, 8. My 5s are the smallest, so I'm going to focus on those. I have a 2 and a 1. Smallest number. Second smallest number. Third smallest number, because I have a 7, and my largest one has my 8. And again, I'm going to go ahead and write them in order. So my least one is going to be 7.521 times 10, or 5.1, sorry, times 10 to the negative 1. My number 2 is going to be 0.752. Number 3 is 78%, and number 4 is 4/5. So apologize about that mistake there. All right. If you have any questions, again, please make sure you ask your teacher. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move on. This next one is a pretty good one. So let's go ahead and solve this out. I'm going to have 4.3 times 10 to the negative 2, 4/9, 2/5, 0.439, and 43.1%. And again, I'm going to go ahead and change everything into decimals. Make it smaller twice by moving to the left once, twice. Gives me 0.043. 4 over 9, or 4/9, gives me 0.444 repeated. And if you're not sure, again, go ahead and do some long division and work it out. 2/5 is going to give me 0.40. This is already a decimal. D to P, I have a percent to a decimal. I'm moving the decimal over twice, 0.431. I'm going to add a 0 in there to make comparing easier. And I'm going to go from least to greatest. So here we go. I have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Those are the same, moving next door. 0, 4, 4, 4, 4. That 0 is definitely smaller than the other ones. So that one is done. 4, 4, 4, 4. Those are all the same, move next door. 4, 0, 3, 3. 0 is my smallest. That's going to become my second place. Then I have a 3 and a 3. Those are tied, move next door. I have a 1, and then I have a 9, and then I'm going to have my 4. So again, your last step is to write them in order. My lowest or least number is 4.3 times 10 to the negative second power, followed by 2/5, followed by 43.1%, followed by 0.439, followed by 4/9. Done. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Almost done already, you guys. Good job. Let me get all my stuff together here. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And I'm going to calculate the decimal, percent, fraction, and fraction for the shaded region. Before I do anything, I know that when I have a fraction, that the top part of my fraction is part of the whole. So if I look at part of the whole, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 pieces altogether. And out of those 12, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shaded. So now I need to calculate the decimal, percent, and fraction for that shaded region. And before I do this, because I can simplify this, this is going to make this a lot easier. I know that I can take out 4 to the top and bottom. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Makes it so much easier. And I also know now that 2/3 is also going to give me 0.6 repeated. So there's my decimal already, 0.6 repeated. Here's my percent. My percent is going to be 66.6 repeated percent, because my decimal is going to be on and on and on and on. D to P, 2 times, once, twice, gives me 66 up top, and those 6's are going to repeat, so that's where I need my repeat sign from. One quick item, because I have a repeated number, my bottom of my fraction is not going to be out of 10, it's going to be out of 9. So if I take a look at this, I'm going to have 6, here's my decimal 6, out of 9, to let my audience know that that number is going to be repeating. Okay? So this is the only tricky part to it. When you have repeating numbers and you're making them into a fraction, you need to make sure that they're over 9 and not 10 or 100. It'll be like 99 or 9 or 999. Okay, so check with your teacher about that if you have any confusion. Almost done, everybody. Last one. I'm going to go ahead and order these fractions from greatest to least. And there's a couple tricks to the trade on this one. So this is the one I didn't do a box for or anything else, because we're going to do this together. One way that I can take a look at this is I could turn every single one of these into a decimal and do top divided by the bottom. That would be hugely, hugely, hugely painful. What I can do though is I can line these all up. Watch this. make everything improper. So 1 times 6 is 6 plus 1 is 7 over 6. 1 times 3 is 3 plus 2 is 5 over 3. 2 plus 2 times 5 is 10 plus 4 is 14 over 5. And 1/3. And what I can do is I can make all of these into a common denominator. Okay? Kind of hard with those numbers. Kind of very hard with those numbers, actually. But that's one way to do them. Another way to do them is to go ahead and turn them into decimals. So I'm going to have 5/9, which is going to turn into 0.55 repeating. 7/6 is going to give me 1 and 0.16 repeating. I'm going to have 1.66 repeating. I'm going to have 2.80. And my last one, I'm going to have 0.33 repeating. I'll go over one where we can use a common denominator to show you guys the difference between that. And if I'm going greatest to least, take a look at your whole numbers. I know that this number is going to be definitely my biggest number because my whole number is 2. So my biggest number is going to be 2 4/5. Taking a look at this one here, I have a 1 and a 1 and a 1 again and a 6. My 6 is going to be greatest. So if I take a look at that fraction, it's going to be 1 2/3. That's going to leave me 1 1/6 next. So if you notice, whole number, biggest one first, then my next whole numbers. Now you got to actually look at the fractions on those ones. And now I can finish off by looking at 0.55 repeated comes next, followed by 1/3. Okay, so I talked about finding a common denominator, so here's an example of that. If I had 1/2 and 1/4 and 3/8, and I wanted to go ahead and compare and put them in order, let's say from least to greatest, I can find a common denominator. And if you think about it, the most common denominator between all those three numbers is going to be 8. So let's fix the numerators. How many 2's fit into 8? 4. How many 4's fit into 8? 2. Leaves that. So now that my bottoms are all the same, let's take a look and order them. 2 is smallest, 1/4 is going to be it. My next smallest is 3/8, and my largest top number or numerator is going to be 4/8, which is represented by 1/2. Okay, we're going to be going over these on Thursday and Friday in class, and then again on Monday as a review. So if you're watching this ahead of time and this seems confusing, give it a couple days and we can get everybody's notes done and everybody should be in a much better place. Okay, I wanted to go over a list of stuff that I really want you guys to kind of look over to make sure that you are understanding some of the extra stuff that's going to be on your test. Please look over two-step equations. That's when it kind of looks like this. Okay, so make sure you understand how to solve those. Take a look at your order of operations, which is following PEMDAS. So make sure you understand those and practice those. Take a look at your exponents with and without parentheses. For an example, if you have -4 squared, that means -4 times -4, which is going to be +16. And that's different from if you have -4 squared. That just means that you have a negative times a 4 times a 4, which is still going to give you -16. So look over those and make sure you understand what the differences between those are. And then the last thing I would look over are square roots. That's it, everybody. Please make sure that you look over your notes. Again, your test is on Tuesday. Come with questions to class if you need anything explained. If you're watching this early and you're confused about this kind of stuff, please just give it a day or two for your teachers to go over it and for us to review it. And if you're still unsure, ask lots of questions, and then we'll get you through everything. Okay? All right. Have a good night, everybody.